far as the USO, you know, it's thumbs up for me. I really appreciate it.
There really are no limits to our job here in the USO. No limits at all. Our job covers anything we can do to assist them to make their stay here better, safer, and happier.
For 50 years, America's men and women in arms have had a special friend to turn to. The USO is always home. That story and much more next here on For Veterans Only.
For Veterans Only is made possible by a grant from the U.S. Department of Labor, Veterans Employment and Training Service, Washington, D.C. Additional funding has also been provided by the Commonwealth of Kentucky Cabinet for Human Resources, by AMVETS, a national veterans service organization, and by the DAV, the Disabled American Veterans. The producers thank this station and other public television stations for their assistance in making this program available. For Veterans Only is also telecast by the Armed Forces Radio and Television Service for the benefit of the men and women serving on active duty in our armed forces at home and abroad.
For Veterans Only is a national television news magazine for America's veterans and a presentation of Veterans Productions USA. Reporting for Veterans Only is Brian Patrick.
We'll get to Mike Victor's feature report on the USO in a minute. But first, as thousands of American soldiers and their families were preparing to celebrate the holidays together, President Bush and his staff were making other plans. Just days before Christmas, more than 20,000 U.S. troops were sent to invade Panama in an effort to oust Panamanian strongman Manuel Noriega and bring him back to the States to face drug trafficking charges. The move surprised most of the country, including members of Congress.
I think it's always a surprise when that type of thing happens. I had visited Panama just 6 weeks prior to the invasion and had been briefed by General Thurman down there. First of all, I was briefed on the coup attempt and the miscalculations and everything that went into it, and the fact that the gentleman, that the colonel that was going to try to perform the coup was just about the same type of person that Noriega was. That's why the United States government did not get involved in the coup.
More than 25 soldiers were killed in the invasion and hundreds more wounded. It's a high price to pay, but one that Bunning feels is justified.
I'm very, very sorry for the military personnel that have lost their lives, the civilian personnel that have lost their lives, and for that matter, the Panamanians that have lost their lives. But I think under the circumstances, George Bush and the administration and the Department of Defense did the correct thing.
As the effort to get Noriega out of Panama continues to drag on and the transition is made to the new government of Guillermo Andara, will Congress continue to support a U.S. military occupation of Panama?
The Congress will be tolerant until the Andara government gets their feet on the ground and obviously takes control. Generally speaking, as you well know, whoever controls the military generally controls a Central American country. It's going to take a very large commitment from the Panamanian people and the Panamanian military for this democratically elected government to work.
The invasion of Panama has proven to be the largest military action since the war in Vietnam. The hope is that this situation will be resolved quickly, and the goal of bringing Noriega to justice will be met. The holiday season brings back pleasant memories for most of us, and for many who serve their country around the world, those holiday memories include a break from the routine, a special holiday show, a touch of home. Mike Victor has our feature report on the organization that made those memories possible, the USO.
Laughing daughters and smiling sons, your best friends and your special ones, we're always there wherever you go. The USO is always home. Life is good and it's sometimes hard, across the world in your backyard. For those who serve, you're not alone. The USO is always home.
Lasting memories, the happy side of stories told by soldiers and sailors for half a century. They have all come home to the USO. In 1941, President Roosevelt made a call to the public to unite behind those who were in uniform, away from their families, their homes, and their country. At the time, there were half a dozen organizations making an effort, but lacking unity and resources.
And so there was a little bit of maybe confusion about how this civilian support of the military was going to come about. And FDR sort of recommended that maybe the way to do this is to get all these agencies together to form one United Service Organizations.
The new union quickly gained public support. The six-starred flag reflects the contribution of the founders, the YWCA, YMCA, the Salvation Army, Catholic Community Service, the Jewish Welfare Board, and Travelers Aid. The organization grew, fed only by donations from the private sector. Resources were used to follow the troops wherever they went. Family centers meant no matter the shore, there was a home. Fleet centers greeted the weary sailor longing for rest on solid ground. And airport centers opened to aid the ever-increasing number of those needing help. All Americans saw an opportunity to show they cared, and the contributions of goods and equipment poured in. But the biggest contribution came from the tens of thousands of volunteers.
We attract the type of person who is experienced and who does this sort of job out of a genuine love, genuine feeling of wanting to help. And you can't pay for that.
While millions of citizens made the USO a success, one man's name is synonymous with the organization, Bob Hope.
It was by mistake, because I was doing my radio show at Hollywood and Vine, or Sunset and Vine, in 1941, and our producer said, "They want you down at March Air Force Base." And I said, "What for? There's no war or anything." I didn't know anything about the troop shows or anything. And they said, "They want you down." I didn't know he had a brother in the service.
We did a show there on a makeshift stage down there before an audience whose reaction was nothing short of fantastic. And for 40 years, this romance developed. Let me tell you, it was something. We took the whole gang along, Jerry Colonna, Francis Langford, Tony Romano, and Skinny Ennis and the band. It was great. We were off and running, but of course, December that year, along came Pearl Harbor, and then it got really dramatic, and we really went at it. We did a show at the Santa Ana Air Base. Along the way, we were joined by a hitchhiker who turned out to have some talent.
Mares-y-dotes and dozy-dotes and a kiddly ivy too, wouldn't you?
With the Great War finally over, the USO scaled down, only to redeploy in Korea. Afterwards, large companies of men abroad kept the USO busy. Then, Vietnam.
Hello, advisors.
The unpopularity of the Vietnam War and the uneasy peace which followed seemed to drain the focus of the USO. By the mid-'80s, it was deep in debt. The doors were about to be closed for good. Then Chuck Hagel stepped through.
The first task was to really apply an immediate business-like approach to running this organization. That meant raising new funds, getting out of debt, putting a focus and an image on the organization. Where are we going? Why are we going? And then just shaking it down and saying, quite simply, you cannot be everything to everybody. And you pick 5 things that you do well, you can do better than anyone else, and you do them.
Hagel's plan to upgrade services to military personnel, no matter how remote, brought in big corporate sponsors. The USO's books are now soundly in the black. It is serving in 28 different countries, 160 different locations. While America may have smaller armies overseas in the future years, the USO could be even more necessary.
Some of the programs that might be affected first would be some of the morale programs, right along with perhaps some of the weapons systems or things of that nature that will experience cutbacks. Certainly some of the programs for morale support may also be affected. And so I think that USO will be asked to step in and do a little bit more in some areas.
To our servicemen and women, USO means good times, the smile and the laugh from those at home, a friend in a foreign land, a phone call, a meal. Tens of millions have had home brought to them. Every Christmas, Bob Hope would get aboard for his 8 days around the world. He would write funny lines while the crew warmed up. Many trips required in-flight refueling to make the packed schedule. He brought laughter to air stations and camps. He ferried to the ships at sea. There were none too small or too far away.
Let me tell you, this is such a classified location, I can't even tell you where we are. They won't even tell them who I am.
Beside Bob Hope since he was 16, Lee Greenwood has now taken over the annual USO Christmas Tour.
They're milking.
That may be possible, but I'm sure if they do choose to fraternize with the local female population, they never let it interfere with their primary military mission.
Yes, along with his laughs, the usual contingent of pretty girls. No complaints from the troops, though.
Hear my voice where you are. Take a train, steal a car, hop a freight, grab a star, come back to me.
To all of our servicemen all over the world and their families, and certainly to ours, we wish you the very best of the new year and a happy holiday season.
Christ is born in Bethlehem. Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King.
So many stars volunteered their performances that USO tours are no longer just for the holidays. It's now a year-round effort, bringing joy to those who take on a tough job and risk their lives.
I don't know what an average week is. 12 hours a day, every day. The time we're off, I've worked longer than that. If we get real busy, you forget to get off.
I don't think anyone can really tell you what 108 days at sea is like. I don't think the average person back in the States can really conceive that, because every day is exactly the same. We go through the same routine. Oftentimes, if we work below decks, we don't see the sunrise or the sunset. So I'd see a Monday is the same as a Friday, as a Thursday, or as a Tuesday. Every day is the same.
I can't imagine going into port without a USO there waiting, because when the kids come ashore and their attention is focused on all of the tours that are made available through the USO, it keeps them out of trouble. They're doing something cultural, they're learning something, they're enjoying themselves, and it's a really tremendous service.
Traveling the world for Veterans Only often encounters the USO. Here, caring for those reunited in Germany, celebrating the 40th anniversary of the Berlin airlift. In this country, where there are 500,000 servicemen and dependents, the job of the USO is immense.
There's a whole world outside the gates of the base. Regardless if those gates are actual or just psychological gates, they need to perhaps consider going outside and finding out what Germany and the Germans really are like.
We take the people actually on the public transportation system to downtown Mannheim, and we teach them how to use it, where to shop, where to go around, what some of the sites that they might be able to see down there, hoping that once they've taken this tour, they'll be more inclined to go there on their own, take their families, and maybe even teach a neighbor or a friend.
I believe the biggest problem that they would have if USO and we didn't have this facility orientation for them, but they would get into a system here where they would not be able to get out and find anything that's available to them. They'd have no knowledge of, naturally, the German language, the German customs, and I feel it's very important for the young soldier to know that.
When the Americans feel at home with the country, the USO helps bring the two peoples together. Pal Day is a hugely popular program, pairing German orphans with their own big brothers for a day neither will forget. Equally unforgettable are the Christmas visits many receive across the world in person.
Daddy, I love you different. I love that guy. Gee whiz, my, oh my. There are things I could do just to say I love you, but all I could say is, gee whiz, I love you, baby.
In this, the year of its golden anniversary, the USO is being celebrated worldwide. At SeaWorld in Orlando, an extravagant show of singing, acting, and skiing stars brings the USO alive to millions of visitors. The new release, Always Home, is broadcasting their accomplishment to the world. Through music, video, and print, Americans are learning their servicemen have a friend in Europe, in Asia, in Panama, everywhere. But the USO can only go as far as the public will send it.
We are not a part of the U.S. government and are not funded. by the U.S. government. And that's, with the red, white, and blue in our logo and the letters U.S. in there, that might mislead some people into thinking that we're a government agency, and that's not true at all. We get tremendous assistance from the military in terms of some in-kind support around the world, and we're very grateful for that. But every dollar that we spend on a USO program somewhere is a dollar that we have to raise someplace else, either through a fundraising, a special event, or through the average American citizen taking out their checkbook and making a contribution to USO.
If a corporation is willing to invest in the future of America, doing it through the USO, because USO takes care of our people, our youth, I think it's a great way to make a contribution to the growth of America, to the future of America, to the youth of America today.
In foreign fields, our servicemen need to know they have their country's support. The USO is that support, as well as the hope from its people.
And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today, 'cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA.
Bringing their message of cheer in every musical language,
Across the plains of Texas, from sea to shining sea.
As sure as I live, this love that I give is gone.
Oh, I didn't mind the swim so much. It was getting out of the sack.
This girl's ready to paint the town. Tonight ain't nothing gonna slow me down.
San Mateo. San Mateo is not San Francisco.
You hear it sing. I've been hold on the rain. I'm the queen of the plain. Timber, I'm falling in love.
That I just happen to be one of them people that know how very important you are. And it's a privilege for me to come and sing for you. Beautiful, for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountains, majesty above the brooding plain.
the USO is one of the few organizations which can say it wishes there was no need for it to exist. But because the world exists as we know it, the USO is there, a needed and much appreciated home of the United States Armed Forces.
Always home.
Vietnam-era veterans who join the service from Kentucky may be eligible for a bonus of up to $500 from the Commonwealth of Kentucky. If you were a resident of Kentucky for at least 6 months prior to enlisting, you may be eligible for the bonus, which is determined by the number of months you served. The bonus is also being offered to surviving beneficiaries. The cutoff for application is February 28th. To find out more about your eligibility and to receive an application, call area code 502-564-5137. That's 502-564-5137. In the state of Kentucky, dial toll-free 1-800-223-0713, 1-800-223-0713. 223-0713. Once again, the application deadline is February 28th. Your application must be accompanied by a copy of your DD-214. If you no longer have your DD-214, call now to receive the address for which you can write to receive a copy. Each of us deals with stress in our everyday lives. But when those daily pressures keep us from going about our regular routine, that could signal a need for help. The trauma of war has disrupted the lives of not only Vietnam veterans, but Korean and World War II vets as well. Dennis West reports on the help available in this week's VA Hotline.
It was combat. I mean, I don't know any other way to put it. Most of our operations were conducted at night, and it was dark and very scary and very bloody sometimes.
Robert Henderson had just turned 19 when he and the Army's 25th Infantry Division entered combat in Vietnam in 1966. Henderson was still in the military when he began experiencing what he calls bad times, but he never talked about it. It would be 10 years until his cycles of depression and other life-disruptive emotions would be diagnosed as PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder.
The three types of symptoms include, first of all, that you must re-experience that event. And this type of symptom, sometimes called re-experiencing the event, includes such things as recurrent dreams or nightmares of the event that happen frequently.
And it seems as though when these things went wrong, a divorce, a job loss, that all the problems associated with Vietnam came back full force. It's just 1968 was yesterday.
The second type of symptom are called avoidance symptoms. And people who are diagnosed as having post-traumatic stress disorder tend to avoid those things that remind them of the event. Also included under avoidance is numbing, or a feeling that you're dissociated from those around you.
Would never discuss the war or anything. I was married for 10 years and my wife knew that I'd been in the Army and been to Nam, and that was all she knew.
And then the third type of symptom is increased arousal. People who have PTSD are often easily startled, for instance. Noises that normally would go unnoticed by you or me would be experienced as loud and intrusive by people who have post-traumatic stress disorder.
The VA Medical Center in Augusta, Georgia is just one of 16 facilities where treatment of PTSD is a total program. It works to dispel the public misconception that the veterans who suffer from PTSD are trying to run from their responsibilities. The truth is that most are decorated heroes who suffer in silence. PTSD can bring shame to its victims as it robs them of the feeling that they are in control of their lives. The treatment can vary.
What it amounts to is having the patient re-experience and relive the event, the traumatic events or events, in a very special way, helping them to process through that and go through it many times, perhaps, over and over again. And when we do that, we find that other things start to appear. They remember things that they had forgotten, that they have repressed, that they have suppressed or avoided.
For those who suffer from PTSD, the closest thing to a cure may be learning to cope.
And it appears that by going through this many times, there's a tendency towards learning to master those memories so that they don't control you, you control them.
But what they are giving me is tools to work with, and it's amazingly simple, the things that perhaps, should have been given, years ago, but I mean, how basic they are. So they're tools that I can use later on in life to continue. I've been here about 3.5 months, and at this point, I'd say the program has saved my life.
Ed Spear is a clinical psychologist and the director of the PTSD treatment program in Augusta. He doesn't think veterans should waste energy looking for a cure, but emphasizes that follow-up is the key in learning to function. Veterans in his therapy group learn to trust and communicate with each other, and this carries over when they leave.
The reports we get that there are changes at home. I went home this weekend and it was different. I was talking more to my wife. I was talking more to my kids. This seemed different. And these are some of the things I really notice.
But if you are a veteran who has been in combat and has and experiences these kinds of symptoms, please go and get some help, because there is some help available.
The VA is learning about PTSD, veterans are learning to cope, and society is learning to accept the veterans who suffer from it. For Veterans Only, I'm Dennis West.
Because veterans' benefits are constantly changing, the Department of Veterans Affairs has prepared a special booklet entitled A Guide to Veterans' Benefits. For a free copy of this informative and timely publication, write to VA Hotline, Post Office Box 1777, Louisville, Kentucky 40201. If you're experiencing a particular problem in qualifying for veterans' entitlements, the Department of Veterans Affairs will provide you with direct assistance. Address your correspondence to VA Hotline, Post Office Box 1777, Louisville, Kentucky 40201.
Next week on For Veterans Only, Don Murray takes a look at the B-24 Liberator, the forgotten bomber of World War II, and a report from Mary Miller on a special conference for military reunion planners. Until then, I'm Brian Patrick. Join us next week on For Veterans Only.
A VHS copy of this or any For Veterans Only program is available for $19.95 plus $2.50 postage and handling. To order, send a check or money order to Videotape, care of For Veterans Only, Post Office Box 1777, Louisville, Kentucky 40201. Please specify subject matter and content of the program. A transcript of this program can be obtained by sending $5 to Transcripts, care of For Veterans Only, Post Office Box 1777, Louisville, Kentucky 40201. Please specify subject matter and content of the program. That's Transcripts, care of For Veterans Only, Post Office Box 1777, Louisville, Kentucky 40201.
For Veterans Only is made possible by a grant from the U.S. Department of Labor, Veterans Employment and Training Service, Washington, D.C. Additional funding has also been provided by the Commonwealth of Kentucky Cabinet for Human Resources, by AMVETS, a national veteran service organization, and by the DAV, the Disabled American Veterans. The producers thank this station and other public television stations for their assistance in making this program available. For Veterans Only is also telecast by the Armed Forces Radio and Television Service for the benefit of the men and women serving on active duty in our armed forces at home and abroad.